Hello, I'm Greg. I'm from a company called Vibrant. If you don't know who we are, we're an experiential commercial marketing firm. When we say commercial marketing firm experiential, what we mean is we expertise in live experiences. Yes, we amplify them, but also we scale them to store or for those some brands direct to your door. And I'm super proud to be joined up here on stage by these two amazing marketing leaders, Katy and Jodi. And we're going to be your post-lunch digestive entertainment for today. So
maybe a little song and dance. I'm not really sure. We didn't prep anything, but we could.
Katy, let's start with you. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your career to date, Invesco, and also your role there.
Great. Hi. Really so happy to be here. And it's been such a fabulous morning from what I've seen, too. So Katy Brady, I'm Director of Brand at Invesco. I've been at Invesco for about 6 years, and then this is where I start to feel kind of old because I'm like, first 10 years of my career were at General Electric, GE. Then I went agency side, creative agency side, so I know just enough about the agency world to make myself dangerous and hopefully a slightly better client for Crossmedia. I don't know, Jodi, you'll have to tell everybody that. And then I went financial services. So for a long time, I was like, I'm a financial services outsider. But now I've been in financial services for about 12 years. So, and really love the space, really think there's so much opportunity to do good, meaningful work. And what is Invesco? And if you don't know what Invesco is, that's something that our team, a lot of the folks that are here, are trying to change. We're a global asset manager. We are trusted to manage people's money and help our clients grow their life, really. And so great honor doing all of that work.
Awesome. And Jodi, do you mind introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about your career to date, your role at Crossmedia, and maybe your relationship here with Invesco?
Absolutely. So hi, everyone. My name is Jodi Monroe. I'm an executive client director here at Crossmedia, and welcome to our space. Hope you all are enjoying it today. My past has been through a myriad of integrated and full-service agencies, areas where I've been a little bit closer to creative and areas when I've been a little bit more focused on media. Here at the agency, I work on Invesco with Katy and team. I also work on Mohegan Sun. My friends are back there. I also work on Fox, and I also work on PwC. And in addition to those, I'm also leading up our initiative with Joan Media. So that's our partnership with Joan Creative, where I think we have some folks here today from Joan Creative somewhere, which really is based on the fact that media and creative are just better together from the start. We can inform and learn so much from each other when we're sitting in the same room, and it's been a delight to work on Joan Creative to date and with Joan Media. I was actually fortunate enough, and Katy and I were talking about this the other day, I was on the pitch team for Invesco, and we realized the other day when we were tracking back in our minds, like, when was this? It was 2021. It was like the late summer of 2021. We were still in lockdown. It wasn't the worst of lockdown, but we were still firmly in lockdown. And I don't think we met until that spring after that. But I remember when we were pitching and talking to the team at Invesco, it just felt like we already knew you all, and it felt like we already had a relationship. And I'm happy and amazed and continue to be proud of everything that we've done to date since then. So it's been a nice partnership.
And we're still meeting people from the pitch. Like, I really thought I met Ray in person, and he's like, no, we've never met. So.
And this is awesome. It's so unique for me to do a panel, and we've got an agency brand relationship here. We can have a fun game of how well do you know each other.
I am an open book and talk way too much, so they know a lot about me. They've met all of my children because of Zoom.
I'm just teasing. Let's start with, you just mentioned about, wanting to get people more about knowing you. Let's start at maybe from the top. Let's talk about branding. How do you view branding, especially in the space that you're in, the financial space, and how do you find that that's unique in that category?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about in financial services that we're really in a category that is a sea of sameness. And this is not to knock any of our competitors or even the work that we've done in the past, but it's a lot of sailboats. It's a lot of people looking at like what their retirement looks like. It's a lot of, again, no offense, very like male driven. And so I think that we have always challenged ourselves in the last 5 to 6 years. How do we stand out in that sea of sameness? And I would actually go back to the beginning of my career at GE, where we were tasked at GE, and now that was about 20 years ago, so companies in a slightly different place, but we were really tasked with changing the perception of GE from light bulbs and appliances, this 100-year-old heritage brand, and helping people understand that we were an energy company, we were a healthcare company, we were a media company, financial services. So I learned a lot from my first 10 years at GE about how do you really think about your audience and how do you approach them as people. Our audience at GE, they were shareholders. They were high net worth investors. They were business people that we wanted to buy our wind turbines. And so how do we reach them as people and tell stories about the product and tell stories about the brand? And I think it was so important to have that foundation because that's actually, I would say, carried me through really nicely into what we do at Invesco. We really try to think about our audiences, which at Invesco is primarily financial advisors and institutions, as well as high net worth and investors. And we talk to them like people. We try to appeal to them, and we try to do as standout work as possible and meet them where they are. A lot of that work, if you've seen anything, our biggest product, if you will, and we've got a fantastic team here that I want to give all the credit to from Invesco QQQ. It's an ETF. It's an ETF of 100 innovators of the NASDAQ 100. And those are companies that people know and love and feel passion for. It's your Apple, it's Starbucks, it's Netflix, it's all these things that touch your daily lives. And so we've used that as a real jumping off point to appeal to our audience's passions and storytelling, and we can get into that a little bit more with some specific examples. But that's how we've started to help ourselves stand out in this asset management sea of sameness. And we love what we see that it's doing for the overall brand. And then also, I think what's also very kind of gratifying is even as we're hiring people to come work at Invesco, they'll say, oh, I saw that. And it's a testament to the media too. It's like we're just getting our friends and neighbors and people that we're trying to hire to the company saying, I saw this XYZ thing from Invesco and Invesco QQQ, and now I know what you're all about. So I think we've tried to approach it as, again, it's business. It's overused now at this point, but it's not just B2B. It's business to human, and it's been really successful for us. Like institutions, people that work in institutions, they don't really want to read a 20-page white paper either. They want to be entertained, but while they're also learning about the product. So it's not entertainment and brand for the sake of doing it. It has really like selling the value prop of the company.
Okay. Well, before we get into some of the campaign stuff, I'll pick on Jodi a little bit here. The classic brief sitting in the agency shoes is, receiving the one, and you talked about audiences. The brief usually reads something like, need to target the younger, investor, but I don't want to alienate my core audience, right? So what are some of the strategies or what are some of the things that you've been incorporating in your career that, can go after that younger consumer, but also not alienate who's your current consumer?
Yeah, I think it all starts with a really robust test and learn agenda, which is something that we've been adamant about making sure that we're all doing. We have to go in and test different partners, whether it be Reddit or others that are continuing to evolve and present as interesting places and spaces. What's interesting to me, kind of one level above that, is there's so much change on the radar for financial services. I mean, we've talked a lot about the kind of exchange of wealth that will be happening, this generational that's happening now, that will continue, the changes in FAs, what FAs look like, what their demographics are. Like they are, for the most part, an older target. They are usually one-dimensional to a degree. So like what are the next generation of those consumers start to look like, and how can we present a roadmap for how we reach them differently? And I think that's what's even more important about doing those unexpected programs that Katy mentioned, because these people aren't one-dimensional, but where we can show up authentically and do so with purpose and in a really resonant way, it's going to punch above its weight always. So that's, I think, something that we've always talked about doing and that we continue to expand upon.
So the FI category, it's really competitive, as we all know. Can you share some of the strategies or even campaigns, even better, Katy, that you've done either in the past or recently that's really helped you stand out in the market?
Yeah, and I would actually lean into what Jodi was saying about authenticity and how important it's been for us to look at the research and data before we begin any of our programs. So actually back in, it was not the best time to start an NCAA partnership in 2020. That's just when it happened. But we were actually looking at getting out of sports marketing. Kind of when I started in the role, and it wasn't just me, it was the CMO at the time too. We were kind of, the team was doing kind of like lower level, like golf and tennis sponsorships that really, we weren't getting enormous brand reach from it. We weren't getting a lot of client engagement with it. And we actually just had a salesperson, this is for any of like the media salespeople in the audience, if there are any, reach out to us to see if we wanted tickets to the Final Four as like a package. We're like, no, we can't really take tickets for client engagement. We're not compliant allowed. But is there a category, do you have the asset management category filled for NCAA? And would that be of interest to our audience? And we had our agency really look into what is the audience demographic? Does it meet our FA audience passion point? Does it meet our high net worth and investor passion point? And it kind of checked all of the boxes, indexed incredibly highly with both of our audiences. It was a total white space for us in terms of, I think people do think of financial services and golf sponsorships, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we also didn't have the budget to do golf well. We had the budget to do NCAA well, and we would stand out because there was nobody like us in the NCAA category. So it started with a lot of research. It's now, I think we're in our 5th or 6th year, and each year, because the first year actually got canceled, so we signed the contract in 2019, the week before the tournament started, the world shut down. Not great, but the team had done, it was a good practice run, I would say. And then we successfully executed it every year after, and the team has just continued to outdo themselves. And I think we've learned every year what's working, what's not working, what can we improve upon. This last year was the first year that we actually got to activate on site experientially, where we brought what we called our Invesco QQQ Innovation Arena to the Final Four. It was basically an AI-generated empowered game where you could play hoops and try to beat Candace Parker, like a legend in college basketball. And so I think, again, we knew our FAs would really love that kind of content. They'd want to interact with it, and then so would our audience of high net worth and investors. And we have other examples of that, too, that we can talk about if there's more time. But we've then now taken that as a passion point and then said, okay, how can we expand beyond that? And I think that's something, especially when you're an organization that we're very risk averse, actually. We're a financial services organization. You want us to be risk averse. So we do like to take our time with testing and learning and not trying to do everything all at once. Once we felt like we had that covered, we then expanded into culinary passion points this year with a really great series called Invesco QQQ's Recipe for Innovation, because maybe not a surprise, financial advisors, high net worth and investors, they love celebrity chefs, they love culinary experiences, and so that's something we've dipped our toes into really quite well this year.
And so, yeah, go ahead, Jodi.
I was just going to add to a little bit of what Katy said too. I think that one of the big things that happened as well was just this idea of purpose. So sometimes the hardest thing is to be purposeful and dedicated and all in on something. And again, as you mentioned, I've seen the partnership for our NCAA and what Tom and his team have been doing with like the universities and others. Like it's expanded, it's grown every single year, it's changed, it's morphed. It's never been really resting back on its laurels. It's always been pushing forward to like what's the next way we can reiterate. And I think that even comes down to how we talk about it amongst the team. Like, we have a bracket together amongst the entire IAT where we fill out a bracket and we compete. Like, just not for money, just for bragging rights, for total bragging rights. But it weaves its way through the entire organization, and I think that really, really requires purpose and dedication and kind of strong arming some things that might pop up in the meantime to be like, no, this is what we're focused on. And I'm excited about culinary and expanding that and kind of going down that same road with culinary. And then what is next after that? I mean, we've talked about, travel, we've talked about other things that are in this same affinity space, but all the time it's, again, like, what's the right place we have to inject ourselves into and the brand, what makes it seamless, what doesn't make it feel forced, and then how are we owning that and moving it forward and then continuing to evolve after that. It's never a let's let's just slap our logos against this and set it and forget it, and it's done. So that's what keeps it exciting for all of us too.
We heard a lot about innovation this morning, and you just mentioned, some different tactics that you've tried, test and learn. I believe you were saying. How does when you're trying something new, what type of measurement do you put on that? Like, what drives something a success? Knowing when it's new, you got to give it time. Like this whole AI thing in Candace Parker, like that's something very different for the category. So, how do you measure success with something like that?
Yeah, I can start, and then would love Jodi because they've Crossmedia has just been wonderful partners in our measurement framework. So I think we've been pretty traditional in that we're looking at overall brand metrics. Like we have a measurement framework that Cross Media helped us build, and so we have a quarterly brand tracker that we're looking at, favorability, awareness. It's actually been incredibly helpful as we're media planning as well, as we're trying to get the most out of the efficiency of our dollars. And then we're looking at like social engagement. We're looking, I would say, at all kind of the traditional tactics, frankly, but I do love what we do as a team, as an IAT, as an interagency team, which is after all of these, big programs, we're sitting down and really taking a hard look at, did this work based on the metrics that we set out at the beginning? Did this work? Did this not? What are maybe not the, 5 things that we would change? We kind of are like, what are the 3 or 4 things that we learned from this that amazing, don't change a thing, or no, for next time we'd really love to change this. But it is also it isn't setting it, forgetting it. It's just I think we're a team driven by, like most teams probably are, like just wanting to outdo yourself every year. When I first joined Invesco, he's still my manager. He said, at the end of the year, I just want you to look back and be like, we made a lot of cool shit. I remember thinking like, this is the person I want to go work for. Obviously, in asset management, the numbers are really important to us, and so we're keeping a very close eye on it, but it's also really gratifying to look back at the end of the year and say, this is a body of work that our team is incredibly proud of.
Absolutely. I would second all of that. I think one of the other things we talk about a lot for Invesco as well is, and we believe in an agency as an agency fundamentally, is that brand is performance, performance is brand, right? And especially when we're talking about financial services and we're talking about, I always tease my team all the time, like we're not talking about deodorant. We're not talking about something you're picking off the shelf every 2 weeks. Like we're talking about longer decision making, more important, really hefty stuff. And so we look at brand and performance as really leading to the same path. There's one that's a little bit more short term, there's one that's a little bit longer term. But the nuance in financial services especially is that they're both crucial to growth. More so, honestly, I think, than potentially any other industry, if I could even go so far as to say that, because you have to have that heft, you have to have that stature, you have to have a brand and a product that you believe is going to take you personally to that next level in your own finances. So I think more so than any other industry, all of that is important, is an important factor in how you're building the brand and the long-term longevity of the brand as well.
What advice would you give to a brand marketer that may not have the resources to sponsor like an NCAA or a celebrity? One of the favorite terms you see is like, we got to be scrappy. What kind of advice would you give to that brand marketer that kind of wants to punch above their weight class?
Yeah, and it's interesting. We've been really lucky over the last few years because the budget has grown. So we've been lucky. But I do think we keep a scrappy mindset as a team. And so we didn't have the budget we do now even 5 years ago. And so a lot of that was building relationships with our executive team so that we were very, like, I didn't go to the executives and say, we just want to do cool shit. We were like, here's NCAA, and here's actually what it's going to do for our business. And so I think it brings it back to what are the overall arching goals of the organization from a business perspective, and being able to show how additive marketing can be to that, and some of these bigger ideas can be. I'd also say we're really lucky in that we have a leadership team at Invesco that truly trusts marketing, and I feel lucky because I haven't always had that experience at asset management. I've been other places where you'd have like the CEO or the president of the business like rewriting your advertising, which is they were not very good at. And so I think we have a team, an executive team at Invesco that actually is like, we'll give you our feedback, but you're the expert in this. You're the brand expert. You're the marketing expert. And so, go do your thing. But I think they have that trust in us because we've been able to show the value in what we've done. And then the other thing I would say too is we are still scrappy. Like, we love to get in a room, all of us, and generate ideas. Not from a media agency perspective necessarily so much, although we do come to you with a ton of ideas. But from a creative agency perspective too, it's like if we don't feel like the creative agency is like nailing the brief, or especially from a social perspective, like, we'll get in a room and actually concept ideas that are sometimes better than ones that we would have gotten from an agency too. So I think it's also like, be willing to take that time to think through like, it sounds like but like, get scrappy, think creatively about like what you want to see come to life. I think some of the best ideas our teams have done have been things that also were generated internally from just ideas that the team had, and then we worked with our partners to make them happen.
You just mentioned that you've come a long way in the 5 years. Your budgets have grown. You're in that brand marketer leadership position. So if I asked you to write your own headline for Invesco, where are you guys 10 years from now?
So everybody knows what Invesco is, and we don't have to explain it. We overtake BlackRock as one of like the biggest brands. And you knew I was going to say that. Sorry. I hope nobody's here from BlackRock. I'm sorry. We're highly competitive. We always want to do better than them. And then we've won a boatload of Effies and Cannes Lions. It's a long headline.
Question for Jodi. Just mentioned from Katy there about being able to nail the brief, but get in the room, the war room sometimes with the agency. What do you think, Jodi, makes a great agency-client relationship?
A couple of things. I think that honest conversations, which I can soundly say that we absolutely have. We have absolutely honest conversations. And that those are good, honest conversations. Those are sometimes like, hey, here's where we can all do better. Honest conversations on both sides. And I think trust. One of our agency mantras is trust, reason, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think that ultimately, if you have all of those elements in the mix and you have a good relationship and everyone feels heard and the communication flows freely, that to me makes a good relationship. And I can honestly say, and I think Katy would say the same thing too, that we both have the benefit of teams that give a shit. And that cannot be understated or undervalued. We both appreciate and value those important contributions of our team members and would not be anywhere near where we are in our relationships if we didn't have those people. So I think all of those kind of form the combination of things that make a really good relationship.
And I guess the last one here for you, Katy, is, we talked about standing out. We heard this morning about some of the trends that people were staying close to. But what about for you, financial sector? What are some of the trends that are either emerging or that you're staying close to right now that you believe is going to be, the short-term future?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pick up on something that Jodi said, which that we're keeping our eye on is just the changing audience. So financial advisors, they are starting to get younger. Also, like the transfer of wealth generationally. And so, a program that we began now, it was like 4 years ago, I guess, was a financial education program tied to the NCAA sponsorship called How Not to Suck at Money. And for college students, but has lessons broadly beyond just college, because we do think as an asset manager, part of our responsibility is to educate the next generation of investors. And that's a nice thing to do, but it's also an important thing to do because it means we'll keep growing our business. If you understand how to use an ETF, you will buy an ETF, hopefully. Or if you come to love an ETF, you'll buy more of it. And so I think keeping our eye on that, probably what so many great examples this morning of influencer work, too. It's been challenging in financial services from a compliance perspective, but the team has figured out a way to do it, and they've also worked very nicely with our compliance teams to start to even do that a bit more. So I think, and I know AI is not our topic, and I would say, I thought it was a great question, like who's using it earlier. It's definitely one of those things, especially, again, financial services, we're risk averse. We're also dipping our toes into that as well, just to see how can we make our jobs easier, not necessarily like create content, not like create AI influencer content, but down the road, how can we start really thinking about how does it free us up to do more strategic, higher value can it write our posts for us that we would then make sure didn't sound like a robot. So we're not doing that quite yet, but it's definitely on the radar if our compliance is going to allow it. Why, yes, we love it. And we keep asking XM to do more of it. We're like, Crossmedia, we want to do more.
No, I think that podcasts are a great opportunity. I think they represent an engaged audience. I think that, podcasts to me represent a little bit of that switch between someone that's a little bit more turned on and leaned into certain topics and wanting to know more and understand more than someone who might not be. And depending on the topic, wanting to learn more about a subject or an area of expertise. So I think it's definitely something that we will continue to evaluate as part of our plan.
Yeah, and actually, if you listen to the Daily on Thanksgiving, I believe we're going to be sponsoring the Thanksgiving Daily. We've got a big spread in the New York Times, big buy. Yeah, we do love them, and it's a joke because every time we get it, we're like, can we do more? Part of it, too, I would say is, and again, I hate to keep talking about compliance, but we'd love to do more like standout creative in podcasting. And it's just a little bit difficult to do that without it triggering like 15 seconds of compliance. But yeah, we're trying to do more and more, especially as we like lean into the culinary space.
Thank you guys so much. Get up for these folks.